Something's happening in this country that the legacy media absolutely does not want you to see. While they're busy spitting their desperate doom and gloom narrative about Trump, quietly, race by race, district by district, Republicans are flipping seats that were never supposed to flip. We're talking about seats Democrats thought were safe, permanently, irreversibly theirs. On top of that, President Trump just posted one of the most savage Truth Social posts you'll ever read. And the polls, they're telling a story about 2026 that nobody in Washington is ready to admit out loud. Stick them to the very end of this video because we're about to see a snapshot of a political realignment that's rewriting the rules of American politics in real time. You are not going to want to miss this. Hey gang, it's me, Dr. Steve, your Patriot Professor, enjoying yet another glorious day in Trump's golden age that you made possible back in November of 2024. So if you want a front row seat on how you continue to change the world in ways you never even imagined, make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. Also, if you believe in what we're building here on this channel, please consider supporting our mission by scanning the QR code below or visiting turley.pub/support. It's one of the most direct and important ways to support our movement of faith, family, and freedom. All right, let's start with the big flip in Anchorage, Alaska. This is huge. In Midtown District 4, Republican Dave Donnelley has flipped a Democrat-held seat on the Anchorage Assembly, and not just any seat. This was a district that Kamala Harris won by 8 points in 2024. Let that hit you. A district that was blue enough to go for Harris and a state Trump carried by 13 points just sent a conservative to City Hall. Donnelley is a known quantity in Alaskan politics, a former state legislator, a 9-year school board member who ran on bread and butter issues, right? Safer neighborhoods, better schools, smarter city services, everything a Democrat can't deliver. The seat had been previously held by Democrat Felix Rivera since 2017. He's a radical leftist loon. He actually barely survived a recall effort back in 2021, but he was term limited out, and Donnelley seized the opening. Now, here's the strategic significance of this. The Democratic Legislative Campaign Committee had literally designated Alaska a battleground state for 2026. They do this every cycle. I have no idea why they do it. Maybe it's just a fundraising tactic. I have no idea. But Democrats were bragging about Alaska. They were fundraising off of it. And then the day after their fundraising emails go out, a Republican flips a Harris plus 8 seat in Anchorage. That's not just a blip, that's a signal. And the signal here is the fact that the Midtown District is demographically working class. And guess who endorsed the Republican candidate? Labor unions and Teamsters. This is proving to be a huge game changer for the midterms. The labor unions have officially defected away from the Democrats for the first time since FDR's New Deal, and they're now pouring millions into Republican campaigns across the country, precisely because Democrats have abandoned them, right? We first saw this back in 2016 when voters went to Hillary's website, and they saw tabs for black issues. They could click on that, or they saw tabs for Latino issues. They can click on that. A tab for women's issues, LGBT issues. There was not a single tab for working class issues. Not one. Whereas when you went to Trump's website back in 2016, that's all it was. It was one big, massive website dedicated to the working class and the issues they cared about, like border security, economic security, and cultural security. And so as a result, nearly 200 counties in Wisconsin, Iowa, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Minnesota that had voted Democrat in every single presidential election over the last several decades suddenly switched over and voted Trump, some by 20-point margins, precisely because particularly the white working class vote swung so significantly over to Trump. He ended up winning states like Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Ohio, and Iowa in a way that a Republican had not one in decades. So if the unions and the Teamsters can get that kind of swing for Republican candidates in general for the midterms, it's going to be a game changer. I mean, there's just no way around that. And again, we're seeing it here with this Anchorage election. If it could turn a Kamala +8 district red, all bets are off. Speaking of, take a look at the latest Cook Political Report congressional map for the midterms. I mean, seriously, look at this. So Cook has the Senate a GOP lock. They're locked in at guaranteed 51 seats. And in the House, Democrats thus far have a solid 213 seats. And the Republicans are a near parity with that, with 208 seats, with just 14 toss-up. That's right in line with election analyst Seth Keshel's projections. So this race, in the end, is going to come down to about a dozen seats. And keep in mind, this is before the VRA decision, right? A decision that will overturn Section 2, the Voting Rights Act. Sam Alito is reportedly writing the majority opinion for that decision, which means that all of these solid blue districts that were deliberately drawn inside solid red states to the exclusion of white voters, right? These are districts that intentionally discriminate against white voters to be deliberately majority-minority voters. They're all going to be struck down as unconstitutional. And Politico has argued that the GOP could pick up as many as 19 seats. That may be a little high. It may be more like 12, 14 or so. Regardless, I mean, they're going to pick up over a dozen seats once that decision is handed down. So even without that decision, the GOP remains super competitive in a midterm environment that has always favored the party out of power over the last century, right? All but three midterms, all but three, 1934, 1998, 2002, saw the party in power, the party out of power pick up seats. Other than that, midterms have always sucked for the party in power, with the minority party picking up an average of over 20 seats. And as you can see, 2026 is ripe for bucking that trend once again. And if the latest polls are any indicator, that's exactly what we're about to see. Wait until you see this. Now, of course, you're never going to get this from the legacy media, and that's because they're too busy fueling America's divide, right? What they try to pass off as neutral reporting often intentionally steers perception instead of surfacing all the facts. Now, the good news is that millions are finally realizing that our legacy media is broken. But then the question is, where do you turn? Where do you get your news? Well, luckily, there's a solution. It helps you see what's being emphasized, ignored, or spun. Ground News pulls headlines from over 50,000 news sources and makes it easier to understand what's actually happening. You can see the political bias of each outlet, insights like reliability, outlet ownership, and how coverage breaks down across the spectrum. That's why over 1 million people have downloaded Ground News. Check it out for yourself at ground.news/Steve. Now, my favorite feature is the blind spot feed. It shows you which stories are blowing up on one side of the aisle but barely mentioned on the other. I mean, it's the clearest way to see media bias in action. So, for example, here's a story that the left is completely ignoring. It's on Congress launching an investigation into the massive fraud that appears to have infested California's hospice program. That's guaranteed to destroy Gavin Newsom's political career. Now, of course, the right, we have our blind spots too, for sure, but now you'll know. With every story, Ground News shows you the entire spectrum of who's reporting from left, right, and center, how reliable each source is, and who owns each outlet. It's everything the corporate press doesn't want you to see. And right now you can get 40% off the Vantage plan, which gives you unlimited access to all the features that I personally use for about $5 per month. Just visit ground.news/Steve, click the link in the description, or scan the QR code. That's ground.news/Steve. Take a look at the latest YouGov poll on Trump's ceasefire deal with Iran. Now, if that deal reopens the Strait of Hormuz, 66% of respondents approve. Nearly 7 in 10 are all in for this ceasefire if it accomplishes precisely what President Trump has called for. And take a look at the latest Rasmussen poll, 49% approval. Again, in a hyper-partisan environment, that is very, very impressive. and it's an important predictive indicator for the midterms. Presidential approval is pretty consistent in terms of its predictive significance. A president underwater, so say in the low 40s or in mid 30s, always loses seats in the midterms. I mean, guarantee. Gallup has been tracking that trend for years. And we're starting to see the fruit of that the closer we get to the midterms. I know many of you were following the election this week for the Georgia 14 seat, right? That's Marjorie Trader Greene's former seat. And the Republican, the great Trump-endorsed Clay Fuller, crushed his Democrat opponent. Trump was ecstatic. He posted, quote, Marjorie Trader Brown, Green turns to brown under stress. Marjorie Trader Brown's seat in Congress has been taken over by a wonderful and talented man, Clay Fuller, who won convincingly. And right from the beginning, despite many people running for that Trump plus 37 seat, and despite the stench left by Green. Congratulations to Clay Fuller, a very large improvement over his deranged predecessor. But Trump, why? Why do you want to take on Trump? There's just no point. All of this, of course, comes on the heels of two elections just a couple of weeks back where the GOP flipped Democrat seats. Republican Jeannie LaCroix flipped a deep blue seat on the Prince William County Board of Supervisors in Virginia. She's the first Republican to hold the Woodbridge seat in 38 years. And in Florida, Selena Samios defeated a Democrat incumbent in the Royal Palm Beach Village Council race that's literally in Trump's backyard. And so with all of these special elections, the Republicans are crushing it. They won just over 50% of all special elections since November of 2024, when you came out and changed the world, by the way. And again, historically speaking, that's unprecedented. The party in power almost always politically suffers in the aftermath of their White House victory. It's called, if you don't know, it's called a refractory period, where the voters that won the White House are basically, they're satisfied with the win. And they go back to their regularly scheduled lives, right? They poured their time, their talent, their treasure into the race for the White House. They won. And now, they return to normalcy. Whereas voters who suffered the loss, they see the midterms as an existential crisis. It's the only possible way to redeem that loss. So they inordinately show up to the polls, zealously so. And that momentum creates this pendulum swing away from the party in power. What we're seeing thus far in 2026 with the Cook Political Report projections, with Trump's solid poll numbers, with these GOP flips, and the VRA decision that's hanging in the balance, the Republicans are poised to pull off a very solid midterm election. Now, again, what that means, we'll have to see the closer we get. Again, it may just come down to a handful of races that could go either way. But thus far, a very impressive showing for a party that should be, based on the precedent of the past, push back on their political heels in all these elections. That's not what we're largely seeing. Trump is poised to pump hundreds of millions of dollars into these dozen or so congressional races. They got a great game plan for the Senate. Elon Musk is pumping his millions into the races, as are the Teamsters. And with the economy set to take off like never before, and peace in the Middle East and the free flow of energy and oil, all bets are off. This is promising to be one heck of a midterms, and it may indeed be historic. Gang, I want to invite you to join me on Saturday, April 18th in Ephrata, Pennsylvania, where I'll be the keynote speaker for Firm Foundations Academy's annual fundraising dinner and silent auction. It's a special night supporting a classically minded Christian school serving families with compassion and excellence. Come enjoy fellowship, a great meal, and an exciting auction, all for a wonderful cause. Scan the QR code to get your ticket, reserve a table, or become a sponsor. I hope to see you there.